Hi everyone, I'm Whitney,
I'm Lexi.
I'm Alonzo, also go by Alo in class.
and this is Sid. Sid, could you please give us just a brief introduction of yourself?
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm a mom of three. My youngest is Rosie. She's 9 months old, and we've recently started to introduce her to foods as well as still breastfeeding. But she's she's sampling the new foods that are out there. So
Okay, the first topic we kind of wanted to go into was the breastfeeding. So, did you choose to breastfeed? Well, obviously you just said you did, but did you only breastfeed or did you combine like formula and breastfeeding? And what was the reason for this?
I just chose breastfeeding. I did it with my oldest too. Uh, my oldest, I only made it to 6 months. My youngest son, I did a whole year. And so with her, I was like, oh, well, we can do this. So,
Yeah,
so
that's great.
9 months strong.
That's good. So she just latched immediately and you're able to breastfeed
Mhm.
the whole pregnancy. That's great.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Do we want to go on to the second question?
Yeah. So you mentioned that like you are already at the set that phase with Rosie of introducing new foods, some solids like that.
Hmm.
Were there any time period in that transitional phases that you had like the hardest time? So like latching or just getting her to try new foods? Were there any like big issues you ever saw with her?
I think our biggest issue was that, well, like two things, I guess. One is that they're developing their gag reflex. And so she would just shove her food into her mouth and then choke. And you're like, oh dear God. Like every 5 seconds, because then she'd choke it out. And then you're like, okay. And then she'd do it again. And you're like, oh my gosh. The other thing too is that as soon as she was like able to sit up, we let her decide if she wanted to eat. She wanted to because she's watching her two older brothers and mom and dad eat, and she would be like not wanting to breastfeed as often because she'd want to eat more food, but then it would cause her to get like kind of backed up because like her system wasn't used to that. So those were really the two things, but they've all kind of resolved themselves as she's figured out how to not choke herself when she eats, and she's also figured out um well, I've also done a better job of not being like, no, yeah, you're just having food because you want it. I'm like, no, we're gonna still have some milk because that'll help your stomach later on. So,
So you said that like she was like already trying to eat food. Do you remember if that was like at the 6 months mark, or was it like a little sooner than that? Because usually the gag reflex starts to wear off around that time period
mhm.
for most babies.
Yeah, she was sitting up, I want to say at like around 5 months. So that's about when she started to try foods. So,
Dang, that's
And one other
that's
thing
early.
as well on that section, did you ever did she ever start teething or like trying to gum her food at that phase, or was that like a little later on when she fully was able to get that biting force in her mouth?
yeah, she was already like biting on toys. So that was also why we were like, oh, it'll probably be okay. But she was still putting too much in at one time. So,
Mhm.
Alrighty. Another question
And
that I had was like what were some of the foods that you used to transition her to a solid diet?
so some foods that we used were, um, like I'd cut a pineapple and I'd cut the core, so it was like a big long spear, and she'd hold it and just gnaw on it. Um, Other foods would be like really finely cut strawberries or really finely cut, kind of whatever we were having. So, like if we had chicken and it was really tender, I'd just cut that really small. But yeah, she really liked pineapple spears, and she really liked cucumber ones as well. So they'd just be sliced
Oh,
really long and big. So she couldn't really break off a piece, but she could like gnaw on it to her heart's desire. So
and that's also good for like teething, right? Because that helps. I don't know exactly how, but
yeah, yeah, it's just like well the pineapple spears I'd freeze them, so then yeah, they'd be cold on her gums, so she really liked it. She
oh,
could suck on it or like gnaw on it to help with her teething if her gums were
yeah.
bothering her.
So do you use any pureed foods now that she's eating more? Like,
Yeah, we get like these. There's a couple brands. There's Happy Tot and there's Serenity, and I can't remember the other one. It's like this farm brand.
oh,
So, and we make sure that they don't have dairy in them so that she doesn't get constipated, but she'll eat those because she'll like be wanting more food, and I'm like, I don't want you to have your stomach hurt. So
yeah.
she eats those now. She really likes those. So it's usually like a mix of vegetables or some have protein in them, like chicken or beef or turkey, and
Oh,
then the other ones are like a fruit chia seed blend. So
oh, interesting. How
yeah,
many of those does she eat, or like how often do you give her that?
she gets one once a day. So
Oh, okay. And just throughout the day, like whenever she's hungry?
usually she gets that like that one at dinner. So like I
Oh,
guess in a day, like in the morning she'll have milk, which is me, and then she'll have eggs, and then she'll have milk and take a nap. And then she'll wake up and she'll have milk, and then she'll usually have whatever for lunch that we're having that I can chop up. It's usually fruit so that again she doesn't get backed up. And then milk, and sometimes a second nap if I'm lucky. And then dinner will be whatever we're eating, just chopped up, and then a
oh,
pouch to go with it. So, and then breast milk
great.
for bed.
That's awesome. Okay, I think that's all I had for this question.
I did have one question I was curious about. You mentioned like you gave them a lot of like fruits and vegetables and like eggs and like trying to avoid dairy.
Mm-hmm.
Were you trying to avoid certain allergens, or was that just because it was easier for you to use those ingredients?
I'm not really trying to avoid allergens. My oldest son does have a peanut allergy, so I haven't introduced peanut butter. But really, the dairy was just, I noticed if I drank milk or ate a lot of cheese through my breast milk, she would still get constipated. So I was like, her stomach just can't really digest that yet. And so it wasn't like I'm scared that she's allergic to it. I'm just don't want her to cause discomfort and then she's irritable because she can't go to the bathroom, but you can't really tell her, oh, like it'll pass. Like she doesn't know. So,
Ah,
And
oh,
then on top of that, I was just kind of curious as well. Do you think she was like had any issues with her current diet? Did you change anything? Did you ever see her potentially react to anything at all, like from what you ever give her? Or was she just a picky eater and just didn't eat that stuff?
yeah, she'll eat everything. It's not until she starts to get full to where she'll like toss it and be done, and then she's just like this week has done like all done, like she'll sign when she's all done, and then she'll just throw the rest of her food on the floor, and I'm like, okay, great, thank you. Like you could just be all done and not huck it all, but that's she'll usually eat everything, but you also have to only give it to her at a time. So it's like if I want her to eat the chicken, I make like her little plate and I put all the things I'm going to give her, and I only give her the chicken and she'll eat it all. But if I give her chicken and strawberries, she might throw the chicken on the floor because the strawberries are sweet and I want to eat those instead. So I can only give her like one food group at a time.
Perfect. Going off of that, did you notice any difference in feeding habits when transitioning to solid foods?
Really just that she kind of wanted to cut out breast milk altogether. but I'm like, you're not that old yet. You can't do that. And then, but other than that, she just wants to eat food and I don't know. She's very interested in trying new things and
Does she,
still, oh,
Yeah.
what?
does she try to like grab for what you have sometimes?
Yeah. Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's yeah, or if it's like I have a coffee, she'll be trying to like swipe at my mug and I'm like, you cannot have this.
Cute.
And then were there any signs of the loss of reflex development going into like transitioning?
Yeah, I have to say like pretty recently she has done a lot better and there's been less of like the reflux. So I think she's had more self-control of like don't shove it all in my mouth at one time, but also the like her reflux has gone down because she's been practicing chewing. So
And then I had another question. Did you use traditional feeding methods or did you choose baby-led weaning? Like,
I chose
sorry, go
oh
ahead. No, go ahead.
I chose baby led weaning. So
Okay.
I feel like if you let them decide, it kind of helps them, be less picky and like even if they just squish it in their fingers, it's like good for them to discover what they like and
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, thank you so much for your time and for doing this interview. I think that's all the questions we have for you, unless anybody has another. No. Alrighty, perfect.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Sid.
Sid.
thank you. Have